I myself, the producer of this podcast, is not eligible to diagnose anyone with a mental health disorder. This podcast is purely for artists discussing the mental health hurdles they struggle with on a daily basis. Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Where's My Mind, a podcast about mental health and the arts. I'm your host, Chris Orangeo, and today I am just talking to someone I met on Facebook. If this is your first time hearing this podcast, I'll kind of break the fourth wall for you here. I've posted topics online about a few months ago from when we are recording, and a lot of artists of all types of artists within the industry have reached out and said, I would like to talk about this, X, Y, and Z. And this woman who reached out to me, who we have on today, has wanted to talk about something a little bit more serious. I know there's been other episodes where we, maybe I would throw in jokes here and there, but like I said, this is something that I think has to be talked about more often than not. And I'm really happy that you brought this to my attention. I have Carla Guttmann. So Carla, thank you for hopping on here today.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. This is my second podcast ever, and my first podcast on the topic of metoo and film festivals. And my objective with this talk actually is also, or this interview, is to really give people and give women hope that things have changed since 2017, and that there are structures in place and people to back you up. And certainly, I also went from a state of total disempowerment at film festivals, A-list film festivals, really well-respected ones, to also turning into something of a festival ninja, if I can say that without sounding, too over the top or too arrogant. But now I really move through there like a thief in the night, and without any harassment or anything. And if I can do it, then other people can do it.
I'm going to say, like I said, I'm going to break the fourth wall again, let people a little insight as to how we came about. Carla has been extremely thorough, like asking a dozen questions, wanting to meet, wanting to make sure like this topic or this specific episode, what the objective is for it. And I really appreciate you for that. It kind of makes me really seem like you care about what we're talking about on here. You're not just hopping on, and I'm not saying people did this at all in any of the episodes, but sometimes with other podcasts, people hop on to promote, right? And I think this is more so. And you mentioned about, us discussing how men, myself, others, specifically men, can be allies to women in the industry and to women who have stories that fall under the Me Too movement. And I totally agree. I right now while we're recording this, there's one. It's not the same thing, but like the whole Johnny Depp and Amber Heard situation, that seems very interesting. That it can also happen to men as well. And I think whenever a man, really quickly, whenever a man is potentially physically abused, I remember people would always say, well, you're a man. Can't you fight them off? Like, can't you physically fight them off? Can't you do that? And I think the whole general subject is something traumatic has happened to you to where you possibly cannot process it. So whether you're a man or a woman, you're not, just because you can possibly potentially physically fight back doesn't mean you have the mental capacity to do so because of how traumatic something happened. So I think that's something from a man. I don't want to, focus too much on it, but like on the man's perspective, but like that's something I think that always has to be said, So if a man who's supposed to be this physically dominant specimen, right, if they don't have the strength to speak up, you really can't sit here and question women who, it's been happening to for eons. Like, it's been happening to more women than men, for decades, right? And it only finally came to light in 2017, And I know you said you had a few stories you'd like to share. I would love to hear them.
Well, absolutely. And I think you're right. It's not, and it's fine that you bring up of course, that you bring up the male perspective, because it's a question also of character, firstly, and of course, men can also get fall into shock and also not be able to react, and also think about the consequences if they do react. How that puts them on the sort of criminal radar. So yes, of course. And I mean, I can only speak to my experiences as a woman, and also how things really changed. And I'm really grateful that things have changed. And I think there was a point where something inside me shifted, where I think I knew what I wanted more from film festivals and from my outcome. And so I wasn't sort of putting myself in situations as well where I was perhaps more vulnerable, or I really took more accountability, because I wanted to be very protected. And also, I was going to festivals to find money for my films. I was going to meet producers. This was, that was my goal. But yeah, I prepared about 3 Me Too experiences at different times in my career. One starting in 2016, before the Me Too movement, or let's say, before the Me Too movement in Hollywood, because the Me Too movement, of course, started in 2006 with Tarana Burke. And then the second wave was ignited in October 2017 with the allegations against Harvey Weinstein. And in the experiences that I had in my career, and the differences between 2016 and 2019 really show how things have changed in the film industry. So the first, the first Me Too experience that I had was at the Berlin Film Festival. It's called Berlinale. And that was in 2016. And I went to a big party thrown by Arte, which is the cultural channel and very powerful broadcaster here in Europe. And they throw quite a big party. And but before that, there's sort of a mixer, and it's not all just, ancient Rome and chaos.
Yeah.
And I went to this party really also to meet producers. I was developing my first feature film. And I went to this party, and the first person who greeted me was a programmer from an A-list festival film. And within 15 minutes, he asked me if my hotel was nearby. And it took him no time to come on to me, and to think that I was spending my time at this party in order to pick him up, or or pick up men, that was my motivation. So I soon kind of turned away from that guy. And then I went onto the dance floor, and I saw a few acquaintances and started dancing. And then I was approached by, and at this stage, I'm like a plus 40 film director. I'm not like a 20-year-old girl out at the local disco, right? Like, there's context here, and you're
Yeah.
at a festival, an A-list festival, which is supposed to represent, sophistication, and supposed to represent the best talent of the world. And so then I go on the dance floor and dance a little bit, and then I get hit on by an acquisitions exec, by a huge American streamer, who pretty much propositions me in the same way. So at this point, I leave the party, and I'm feeling very disillusioned. And as I leave the party, I see a producer from the BBC in England, and he's actually vomiting outside the party, and then no Berlin taxi would let him get in. They're really strict about that here. They don't.
Wow.
Right. And it was I went home, I remember, and I was so disillusioned. Like, I didn't know. I wondered, how am I going to navigate festivals when harassment is happening within like 1 hour, like left, right, and center. And I vowed also, I really remember that, because I vowed on that night I would never wear a dress to a film festival again. I would never wear anything feminine, and I would never wear anything pretty. And I was going to look like a startup CEO.
So you're objectified. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I don't, obviously this might sound like generic, but like, you shouldn't have to worry about how you're dressing, or you should be able to wear what you want to wear when you go to a film festival. Like, it's not fair that, you know, you go to a screening, most likely Q&As or interviews, and guys can dress in tuxes, and now you have to dress like you said, like Mark Zuckerberg, or you know, a broke college kid, so to speak. You know, it's not, you know, that's not fair. And I have a few questions, if you don't mind me asking. So, like, when these two men were like kind of coming on to you, like I guess, did you like have a sense right away of like what it was? Like when they were asking your hotel, like did you just think that like did that click then, or were there other things that he was doing that you were like, this doesn't feel right?
No, I think I remember going to that party on my own, and then because also I like doing that because it means that it pushes me out of my comfort zone to talk to people I haven't met before. And
Mm-hmm.
because I spoke to them, I think they thought, "Oh, this is my way in.
Yeah.
Like she must be game or she's dancing with me. Oh, then she must be game." And but I think the thing that we have to remember that these are not like the first was a programmer for an A-list festival film, and the second was an acquisitions exec for a major US streamer. And the guy throwing up outside was a producer for the BBC. So it shows you,
The level.
from all over the world, these guys think that they are entitled to proposition a female film director at a festival who's looking for funding for her millions for her movies and who lets her hair down and has a good time. I don't drink. So not drinking and what have you, but I'm wearing a nice dress and just talking to them. And they think that they have the right to then automatically turn that into sex. And the thing is this is so crazy because I'm there for business and having fun on the side.
Yeah.
And they should know that because they're doing the same thing. Right?
Yeah.
But the way they define the after parties of festivals is to hook up with whomever. And they obviously don't respect the women who are there. And they obviously don't respect, or even think that maybe this is going to be a powerful director.
Yeah, that's the thing. They you know, they don't know what your status is. They just see a woman who, you know, okay, she's dancing with me, or she may have touched my arm, or she's laughing with me, or she is, you know, listen, I'm 34 years old. When I was 17 or 18, I thought a lot of girls who did all that, like, oh my God, they liked me, right? You make a move, it's, I don't like you like that. You know, that's when guys need to be like, okay, well, it's embarrassing, yes, and I misread it, but like, don't use your power or strength to force anything to happen, like anything, you know. I think, you know, I don't want to speak for every guy because obviously I'm not every guy, but you know, if I would. I remember when I was 18, like a girl would reject my friend, or even well, oh, she must be a lesbian, or she's a dumb bitch, or that, like you just kind of go off the rails instead of being like, man, like, just okay, she just wasn't interested in you because you're trying to pick up a woman at a club, or like you know, like you're trying to, the way you're doing it, maybe that's not what they're doing, like, or maybe they're just out to have a good time. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's never, like, you're never thinking, when you're thinking with, you know, as, I'm not trying to be crude, but like when a guy is thinking with his penis, right? You're not thinking with your brain, you know, like that's just it, right? Right. So then for them to see, like, and you know, and like you said, they're different positions within this massive festival. Like, if the president of that festival ever found that out, and hopefully they, you know, that's a representation of their festival then, right? Like, that's something that they don't even think about either, you know. What happened after all that? Did you report, or did you report to anyone? Did you know what was? I know you said you changed the way your wardrobe was moving forward, and I'm sure maybe you can confirm or deny. I'm sure you probably weren't dancing as much, or you would bring someone with you now. You wouldn't go by yourself. What were some changes that happened after that first encounter?
Yeah, and also just a note, because I'm not a very like touchy-feely person. So also with all of these three men, I didn't touch them.
That's
So it's,
that.
it's really like they're in their own film.
Which is even worse. Which is even worse. And I'm not saying if a woman touches you, then that gives you right to do that. I'm not saying that. There are times where I was doing, from my example, if a girl would touch me on my arm, or like there would be just that physical touch. Some guys could be like, what was that? You're sitting here saying I didn't touch them at all. Like there was not even like there was nothing of that nature, and they still thought that they could do what they did. That just goes to show that most men really believe that they are untouchable, and that is that I'm so happy it's changed. It might be slowly changing, but I'm happy for all the bad stuff that happened with Harvey Weinstein and all of that. There is good to come out of it, because now it sets a firm like behavior on set. That type of behavior anywhere is not allowed. Any workplace, non-film related or not, it's you don't do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm only sorry that so many women had to go through so much suffering before that story unfolded, because it is, Harvey Weinstein, or, Bill Cosby, or whomever. It's just it's yeah, it's a disgrace for sure. But this example I chose because I felt like it was very typical also for me. I'm not sure if it's typical for other women. It'd be interesting to hear. But in this case, I became totally disillusioned, and then went home, vowed never to wear a nice dress to a film festival party again. um, it got me a little bit off track finding film financing for my movie. And then I just complained about it to my girlfriend. So this was, and the reason why I bring that up is that, like, that too is a kind of strategy. Do you know? So the strategy was, I'm going to feel disempowered. I'm going to talk about it with my girlfriends, and then it's going to get me off the saddle. And so the next story that I had has, like, actually is more empowering, um, and also with a different twist on actually what I was wearing, and how that didn't make a goddamn difference.
Yeah, yeah.
So the next story,
No, no, no. You're not. You're not. You're not. It's just. It is kind of like, I don't know. It's always tough for me to hear. Like, if I'm being honest with you, because you just feel responsible. I know it sounds, people want to make jokes about it, but like white guilt when you hear certain things, or male guilt, like you just kind of, I don't, because I think what's going back in my head is like all the times, like when I was younger and you just didn't know. Now, I didn't, I don't think I ever did anything excessive, really, but like even like my mindset of like, oh, she didn't like me, so it's fuck her, kind of like, what I'm saying, like you just, and then I'm about to have a daughter, and it's like you joke around about, or you try to make light of it, but it's like, man, like I know what guys want. I'm a guy, like, so just where you keep that balance of like wanting to protect, like even like my sister, or like the women in my life, like how do you protect them without being like overbearing, right? Because you don't want to be like I'm married, but like if you're a single guy and you see a girl with a guy who's known to kind of be like a womanizer, like that, if you're that guy trying to protect that girl, oh well, you're jealous, you're this, you're that, so it's just a really interesting, it's just a weird line. I know you're saying like, oh, you're depressing me, but it's just very sad, because it's like when these stories like this, like they come through your head and you're just like,
there's a lot that you can do. Like the first thing you can do is talk about these things, firstly, with your male colleagues.
No, you're right, and you just kind of hope that they would listen. But sometimes, unfortunately, most of the time, there's crude jokes that come with it. So it's like, I know for me, and you know, I this is a weird example. It will make sense, I promise. Recently at my wedding, like my mom was kind of astonished that like all my friends from like Florida, from all different places, all my friends, she was like, wow, all of them act like they've known each other for years. They're all getting like they're all getting along together. And my one friend's like, well, it's because of Chris, like it's because of me, like my personality. You attract friends who you attract like-minded people, right? Like I am not friends with anyone who thinks that they are the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? Like I try to work with humble people. I try to do all that. So I think that's kind of, you know, if you're the guy is an ally for it and is standing up for it, then most guys around me are going to be that way too. Like if someone said, like, there's times, like, I'll be very blunt and honest with you. People will say in our circle, like someone will say a stupid like rape joke, and then another guy will be like, dude, not cool. Like when those things happen, I'm like, I'm a very proud human being, because it's like, wow, like a guy just called out another guy for like a rape joke. What I'm saying? Like a guy, like when you see that happen, then there's your faith is a little restored. But I think it's going to have to take a massive like change, not just like, I don't think I'm going personally, me, and maybe you could contradict it or have a rebuttal to it. I don't think if I try to do my best I can do, I don't know what change I'm really making as a big whole. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but you are making a change because, for example, when you are making your films, that you set the standard, because even though you might know like the key crew, they have all their assistants, and the assistants might not have the same standards, for example. And then when people do act out or make extremely distasteful or misogynist jokes or violent jokes, that you are able to say that's beneath the standard of this production and we don't tolerate it,
Yeah.
and you put people in their place. And also, the main thing with men is that when they start to realize that that kind of attitude can affect their livelihood, that's where change will happen,
I mean, yeah, yeah.
right?
It's I learned something when I was it's like I said, I don't know if this relates to it or not. When I was younger, I got suspended for being in a circle of people making fun of a girl, and I was laughing. I didn't say anything. I was laughing. I got suspended. So you are now like, what's the term, I guess? Like you're associated with them because you were partaking in it. Like because I didn't say, hey, like cut that crap out, cut that shit out. That girl was just like, these are the guys that made fun of me, like down the line. That was a one of the most important lessons I ever learned. Like I literally was just standing there. I was 12 or 13 and I was laughing. But no one said like, hey, you guys should cut that out. The girl went to the principal and cried and told her, and my mom was livid. My mom's like, you're not like, that's not like, why are you, I was like, I don't even know these guys. I was just sitting there laughing. She's like, well, once they start making fun of someone, just walk away. Just walk away. In that sense, yes, you walk away or you stand up for her but she's like, just don't partake in that because that girl didn't deserve that. And that's kind of what all of this is like for the women that who are saying like, this is what happened to me. Like, you have to stick with that. You have to, be an ally, right? I think as crazy as it's, and I have a lot of my friends who are different races, and they're like, dude, just by you posting something on Facebook, like just that makes a difference. I was like, yeah, but I don't, I post it because of it really angers me, but I don't know what a Facebook post, a tweet, what any of that's going to do. And a lot of my friends who are black, they're like, dude, like you can say it, like, and this was years ago. Now it's, everyone is really more, they speak up and people listen. But my buddies were like, dude, like you could say it because like you're a white dude, people will listen to you. Some people will just think that we're being too quote unquote like woke or whatever. And I'm like, I don't think about it that way, So like,
Absolutely. You need to acknowledge that you in the hierarchy of things that you actually have the most power as a white heterosexual man. And when a good example is like Benedict Cumberbatch, who said, I won't be a part of any production where the leading lady is not paid the same amount of money as I am. So the world is made up of so many different kinds of people that we need to celebrate and protect,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And not let people with so much power bully other people without power.
Yeah, and that's kind of it comes down to just that, like you said. It comes down to not allowing the people of power to really kind of, I mean, make everyone else feel like beneath them. And it's super equal. I mean, it's super. Like I said, it might be a basic comment or something, but I just really wish, like one day, I don't even know if I'll be alive for it, but I just really wish one day, like everyone was on the same playing field. It's like you just respect everyone equally, like, and it's interesting because like my wife and I, we come from two different backgrounds essentially, but I mean, her parents and my parents raised us the exact same way. And I think that's why a big part of why we connected so well. Same with my friends. Like, if you have the same ideology and the same thoughts of, same basic thoughts of like everyone, like, it's funny. And I'm not saying it to be, I'm not calling her out on this, but like my wife is like, I'm not a feminist. I don't like that term. I think, and I'm like, but like you are like no, like I'm just saying like she fights for a lot of shit at work to get equal pay. Like she will go toe to toe with someone when they're like, oh, I don't think women should get, like, she will go and she's like, no, I just think like sometimes the term and people who represent that term, she doesn't like it, so, essentially. But she she is worried that she is not going to, like, she's worried about showing our daughter that is not born yet, but showing her like I could still have a career and be a mother. Like that to me, that is like that is like you are a feminist in that way. If you believe that women should be equal to men in almost in everything, then you're a like that's what it comes down to, right? What I'm saying? Like that's what it comes down to. And I think she just is kind of jaded by the term. But when I hear her say stuff about like how she fought so hard at work to get like equal pay and to get what she is deserved. I'm like, you have no idea. Like I'm so proud. Like I'm proud of you that you stepped up because most people, man or woman, would be like, oh, you know what? I'm not worth that. So I'm just going to kind of like just sit back and like kind of take it on the chin. No, like like you went to corporate to talk about, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a big thing.
Amazing. Amazing. Having a healthy fighting spirit, so vital.
Yeah, but most women who have those fighting spirits are deemed quote unquote bitchy. But it's like an aggressive woman is a bitch, an aggressive man is a leader. But it's like I don't know. I would respect, and going back to what you said, like why on cruise, like why can't you mix it up? But what was your second? I'm sorry. What was your second empowering story that you dealt with at a festival?
So this happened. So the next Me Too encounter was in Toronto, Toronto 2019.
Okay.
The
Was it
Toronto
at?
Film Festival, TIFF,
Yep. Yeah. Oh,
exactly.
you're really been to all the big festivals then. I'm talking to someone who's been everywhere. I'm so envious. I'm and I'm honored that you hopped on here because those festivals are only something I dream of going to one day, and having a project in. So
Well, also since I'm originally I live in Berlin, but I'm Canadian and grew up in Montreal, and so going to Toronto is like a very logical step. Also, since I am a Canadian citizen, so for the financing as well, it's important
okay.
for me to go to Toronto. I go a lot to the Berlin Film Festival since I live here, and then a lot to Toronto as well. And there's a co-production treaty that happens between Canada and Germany, so it's also very smart to kind of see. I like to see which German producers are in Canada, and when I'm in Berlin, to see which Canadian producers are here. So you can potentially make
Yeah.
a co-production that's very organic. And yeah, so I went to. I was at the Canadian Directors Guild party, fancy, fancy, in Toronto, and I had an industry pass, so I was spending 5 days at the industry conference at TIFF, where you go to the conference and you hear a lot of people speaking on different their panels, their workshops. It's like every single day. Very, very impressive kind of lineup of people who are either showing their films or have been in the industry for a long time, and like for example, like Fernando Mireille, who did City of God, he was there and he was talking about the two popes and like really, really top people in the industry. It's really impressive. And when I went to the industry conference, of course, I made some friends there, and I ended up spending most of my time with one other woman who's a producer and actress, and then three other male producers, and the five of us kind of did the industry conference together. And we all went to this party at the Directors Guild, and we did a group photo where we all had our arms around each other. And after taking the photo, and I had only had, or we had gone to the dance floor and people started having wine. One of the guys who we'd been hanging out with all week, he just turned to me and he said, it was super vulgar. I'm like, I'm almost ashamed to even say it on a podcast, but I will say it because there's a point to the second half of the story, which is that he said, would you like to come upstairs to my hotel and ride me like a cowboy? And I put down my drink. I think I even was having a wine that night, but I make it a point of not drinking at festivals. It's not my MO.
I'm like that. I'm like that at my work events. Yeah, there's a time and place to drink and have a good time.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't say anything to my colleagues. No one heard this, and I ended up leaving. And then I missed the morning at the industry conference because I was still like a little bit rattled because this is someone I had built sort of some trust with over the days that we were there, and the five of us were moving together as a kind of group. And then I saw the female actress and producer at the conference midday the next day, and she was like, "Oh, where were you this morning?" And I said, "Well, I needed to take some time for myself." And meanwhile, as I'm speaking to her, the man who harassed me, came up to listen to what we were talking about. And so then in front of him, I started to recount the harassment. And at the end of my recounting, I said, "Yes." And he said, "Would you like to go to my hotel room so you can ride me like a cowboy?" And here he is. And then I pointed to him, and his face turned bright red. There were all these people around us, and her jaw dropped and turned to him, and she starts getting so mad at him because she knew him from Toronto, and she knew that I had flown in at a great expense from Berlin to get funding for my feature, to meet producers, etc., and that I was a really serious person. And then the two other guys who had been with us that evening, they came over and asked what had happened. And this guy, when I said, "And then this is him," all of a sudden he started accusing me that because I put my arm around him for a group photo, that this meant that I was interested in him. So the actress took him by the side and gave him a good yelling at. And the two other men who were producers, they were like, "You were fine all week. You did nothing wrong. And we don't want to work with a guy like that. And especially not in this climate." Because this was 2019. This was 2 years after what had happened in Hollywood in 2017. And, there are also massive signs, thank God, at TIFF at the industry conference that say, if you were harassed, please report it. Here's the number. I think do they put an email? But at any rate, there was a number to call.
Did you end up reporting him?
I ended up not reporting him because he really had enough punishment through the fact that he lost two male colleagues working in Toronto, or one was in France, one was in Toronto, and the woman who's also a producer, and he lost me And he gave face in this because we were in this kind of hallway with, over 200 people who were at the conference. But it was the first, and I would like to note that I was in my t-shirt and jeans outfit for the entire week.
Yeah.
So the clothing doesn't matter, but what
Mhm.
was incredible, what was really incredible was, firstly, I decided I'm not going to go home and swallow this and talk to my female colleagues about this. I am going to find a calm, cool way of managing it. It didn't go perfectly, my legs started shaking as he, was standing there, and I had to, and I knew I was about to out him in public. And so it wasn't perfect. I'm not pretending to be some perfect Marvel character. But it really gave me the confidence that you can use humor and wit and intelligence to make people who are extremely small and predatory, make them look like fools, because they are. He was
Yeah.
being absolutely foolish. And I didn't fly 5,000 kilometers to a film festival to be harassed by some loser.
That's a very empowering story. Like, not even like, even on a smaller scale of like sticking up for yourself and what you believe in, like you to call someone out on like their shit in front of them and into other people, you don't know how he was going to react at all, and it's a beautiful thing that your colleagues like quickly, like instantly had your back, rather than be like, well, Carla, are you sure about that? Like, are you sure that really happened? That doesn't really seem like it. Like they were like right then and there, they were like, what are you thinking, dude? And I think did that make you feel good? Did that make you feel good afterwards?
If Yes, absolutely, because it also showed me, they're, firstly, they're men and they're men. And secondly, that if for them, it was very, very clear why I was at the conference. And if you start hanging out with men at the conference, it's because it's a bit lonely to do the whole festival on your own. And especially if you're an international, it's not like you're flying to festivals even with your partner or with your friends. And they thought they couldn't believe that in this climate that he would even dare go there. So the two other producers, the one from France and the other one from Toronto, they were fantastic. And I let the other female producer really, like, she she laid into him. So I had kind of support from all sides.
Yeah.
But it was really important. I feel like the moment it happened, I couldn't stand up for myself because I also went into a kind of shock, and I just wanted to get out of there. But I think it is really, really important, or at least for me, it was very important to be like, okay, I'm not going to let this slide. I'm going to confront this guy.
Yeah.
It's hard, and I'm scared, and I don't want to lose my shit, and I have my reputation to protect, and I don't want to be known as, what have you, an angry woman, a difficult woman, what have you. But I was really relieved to know that these guys had my back, and it showed me how important it is that men stick up for what's right when it comes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I personally think more men would be, I don't know. I don't know. I think it says a lot about a person's character, how they are when things happen in real time. I'd like to think like a man in real time would do exactly what your colleagues did, especially after, like, in 2019, like after all that's gone down, like it's very, very important that that happens, So, that's a really, especially from the first story, and those were what, 3 years apart, you said? Yes. So, you know, so when that happened, right, in 2019, when that happened, were things flooding back to you from 2016? Like, was the fact that maybe in 2016 you didn't necessarily speak up, right? Was that something in the back of your mind, like, all right, last time this happened, I was such in shock, I didn't know what to do. Like, what was the driving force for you to say something to him? Did it just kind of like, did you know if you saw him, you were going to say something, or was it just a feeling that you got? You're like, the moment's here. I gotta be in that moment right now, and I'm going to do it.
I think it's because of the floodgates that opened after Me Too, and seeing that sign at TIFF that said, "We do not tolerate harassment of any kind, and you will be removed from the festival." And that the festival was behind you, and those signs are everywhere. They were. 2019 was the last time I was at a film festival.
Mhm.
So the signs were at TIFF. The signs were everywhere, and also feeling like this isn't working for me as a strategy anymore, being disillusioned and talking to my female colleagues like this isn't good enough for me anymore. I need to go to the source, confront them, find allies, and do something about it. I don't want to be the woman who gets knocked off the saddle and it's not complaining, but only
Mhm.
talks about it with her girlfriends. Like that also, I felt like it's not changing my reality.
Yeah.
And that and but also what I like about thinking about the story is that it didn't change because of my clothing. And people really always say that. They say, well, you look so sexy. Of course he came on to you.
You could be wearing a sheet over you, and no one, and it would still happen. Someone would find an excuse to say something or do something to you. Everyone wants them. Yeah. 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 That's very. Had your back. That's great. Yeah, I mean, you kind of. There must have been some sort of comfort in that, being like, oh my god, like I said something, and I had people to back me up. Like, this is great. Like, that must have made you feel like $1 million, honestly. Like, when people are able to kind of like justify your feelings and your thoughts, and you don't feel alone in something, I think that's the best time. That's the best feeling in the world.
Absolutely. But I really believe that if I didn't know about the Me Too movement or that hadn't happened, I'm not sure I would have had the courage to stand up for myself and to stand up to him in that way. I don't think so. I think that's what was beautiful about what happened with Me Too, was that it gave people a license to be brave
Yeah.
because you knew that you weren't alone and you knew that people would actually start to believe you and not blame you. And also for crimes far worse than
Mhm.
this is just verbal harassment,
Yeah.
and God forbid. Yeah.
Carla, you also said that you had a third point or a third story throughout the whole experience you had. I wouldn't say experience, but the situations that you had. Would you like to kind of just go over that really quickly of what the third um, story, or I don't know if is it a lesson? I would call it a story per se, more so, but the third story of the that falls under the Me Too movement in the category at festivals.
The third lesson that I learned was in 2019 at Cannes. And it's very topical since Cannes is well underway now as of this week. And that was one of the first festivals that I had where I had a harassment free experience, 100%. And it was because I had learned about the database associated with Cannes, and I did a lot of research like 6 weeks before the festival began. And so I reached out to a lot of producers. I think it was like 67 producers, and then 35 wrote back. And I had something like 10 or 11 meetings pre booked before the festival began. And so this was also one of the first times where I'd really learned that you can get into the deeper layers of the festival without doing the nightlife. And I had all my meetings during the day. They were usually between 30 and 60 minutes. And here people were absolutely interested in the things I had to say and my pitches, and were completely disinterested in me as a woman. So I had no harassment because we were talking about our ideas. And
Now, were you, I don't know how to say it without sounding weird. Were you kind of anticipating any of that type of behavior, or or not really? I know it sounds silly, but like, I feel like if it's happened to you, if it's happened to you before, I feel like there is a sense of like, oh no, is this going to happen again? So I just didn't know if you had that. I don't know if you had that feeling while you were at this festival 3 years ago.
But actually, it's a very good question. It's a very pertinent question, because Cannes is, if you've been watching any of the images, it's so much about glamour and beautiful dresses and stars and all of that. And so it's a really good question. I think that I made a conscious decision to look like a businesswoman, and not to play up my femininity as such. But also, I think the big difference was I went to 2 parties only, because there are parties around the clock. I only went to 2 parties while I was there. I either had no drinks or maximum 1, and I just was a bit conservative. I went to bed early. I woke up early. I worked on my mindset before any of these meetings, and the meetings were all during the day, and they were all by people whom I had vetted and whose work I knew, or I knew something about their company profile, and they had also vetted me. And so it was like a completely different ball game than where I began, going to parties and trying to figure out who the producers were in the room, and being harassed and feeling like I had no place on this in this planet. And so there is, and also, since it was after the Me Too movement, I also felt like I remember at Cannes on the programs, they had, like an email and phone number in case we wanted to contact someone at the festival. Like, you had the sense the festival was behind you. You had like tools with which to, manage any Me Too situations. But in the end, because I set the standard, or I had a different strategy, none of this was even an issue, not even for a minute.
I mean, that's a big plus then. If there's no issue, I think does it give you hope for like future festivals that like there's still like, I don't know, there's still change and or not still change, but there's hope for that. Like, there is hope for change, and there's hope for people actually, taking it seriously. Because it's always a double-edged sword. I think some people really still don't take the Me Too movement seriously. Just kind of, you just like, and I'm not calling anybody out, honestly. It's just things you kind of hear, like jokes people say on set and offset, right? And it's just still like, come on, like we gotta do a lot better than this. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were on does it, do you think this is like the standard moving forward, or do you hope and pray that we never backtrack?
Well, I mean, I pray that we never backtrack, for sure. And I pray that there never, predators like Harvey Weinstein, who could, oppress women for decades and decades and be getting away with that kind of thing. But I think that it's kind of like, how would you say it, bipartite solution, because I think the solution is women in the industry setting standards, being very clear about the standards they want to set of how they want to be treated at festivals, and also finding, their own voice and way in which to out people. But at the same time, a lot is going to be dependent on good men calling out, calling out their male colleagues and standing up to predatorial men, because I think that we can't do it alone. Like, we need you. Without a doubt, we need you. And I think that, to me, was the big shift. If you set a standard for yourself for the way you're going to be treated, and also what you will and will not tolerate, that will set the tone of your festival experience. And I think that was something I never thought about when I first started out, because immediately you feel this pressure to kind of conform and wear gowns and be beautiful and take pictures on the red carpet, even if you're a director. And I think that if we shift the focus to what do women stand for, what is their innovation, what are their ideas, how are they pushing the envelope, and kind of take it away from the pretty packaging of a festival, because it's not like a fashion show. This is about films, and sometimes I feel like we forget that, like, it's about, interesting storytelling, innovative storytelling, radical storytelling. But I think that men have a very big role to play in also setting a standard of equality. 100%.
Yeah, I it's that's kind of, I don't want to say that's interesting, but it is a good, it's an interesting, it is an interesting take that you say that, because I feel like most men feel like it is not their duty to step up and be the voice of reason. For me, and I will give you my personal opinion if you don't mind. I'm always afraid to kind of like, I don't want to overstep any boundaries, right? Like I said, I'm a white straight guy. So people, if I try to step up and say something, oh, you're trying to mansplain, or you're trying to be a protector, or I don't need, this is from my personal experience, like trying to stick up for my sister, being like, I don't need you. We were younger, I think she is a very strong woman, but like, it was very much like, I don't need your help, like back off. So that is for me, I take, this is my flaw. I take one situation I've been in, and I'm assuming all people or all women, like everyone's like that. And I don't want to overstep and help out. Now I need to learn to differentiate. Like when I see that someone, man or woman, is in distress, and might not have necessarily the voice or the strength to step up and say something, then that's when I can step up and say it. But I also don't always want to, I don't know. I just don't want to overstep any boundaries, because we are living in a time, personally, I think, where, it's women's time right now. Honestly, it really is. Like, and that might sound, people might be like, well, what do you mean? I just think stories, and we're seeing a lot of different. I think we're going to see a female president in my future, in my lifetime. And I don't know, maybe I'm feeling these things because I'm about to have a baby girl, and I want her to be really strong, and she's going to be around a lot of strong women in my life, right? But I still also don't want to be like, hey, man to the rescue, because so it's a weird thing. It's like, it's interesting that you say that, because I never thought that way, if that makes sense. I always never wanted to, like, I don't want to step on any toes, essentially. That's basically what I'm saying.
I think there's a difference between supporting women and calling out sexist BS when you hear it, and like mansplaining.
Yes.
Because one comes from this arrogant space, and the other comes from the space of like, I'm here for you, I've got your back.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that also, I mean, a lot of people, what's good about this discussion is, male producers, for example, started to see like, oh my God, in my hiring, I'm always hiring guys. And the only women I'm hiring are actresses, makeup artists, and in costume. And this can't go on, where you also, maybe there's also a male makeup artist you want to hire, or, also considering that you want to give actresses more lines than just casting them based on their beauty, that they also have something important to impart. And I think all of those things play into one another. So the way in which you contribute to either calling out someone when you see them behaving badly at a festival with a woman who's there, or your hiring practices, right? Because you're hiring also, right? you're
Yes.
you're working, you're a director, writer.
Yeah, so I would like your opinion on this then, really quickly, if we're gonna like kind of veer off. The last film I did in late April. Do you think people pay attention to that kind of things? And I would never hire someone. I would never hire a race or a gender just because to fill a quota. I want to hire people who are good. That's what it comes down to. And I look around my crew, and it was split down the middle, men and women, and it's like it made me feel good that we're getting to a point in even small independent films where it's split down the middle that way. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. My two right hand people were my AD and my script supervisor were two women I love working with dearly. Do you think that's do you think people really pay attention to those things?
Not enough. I don't think people pay attention enough to unconscious bias, and I don't think enough people think about whether or not they're casting in a diverse way, and whether their teams are diverse as well. And I think it's important to take a moment and analyze how it is that you're doing that. And I think, if you were in a situation where you heard someone on your team saying something that made your first AD or script really uncomfortable because they were women, then it is absolutely also up to you for you to back those women up. And I think at festivals, that should also be happening, where, because I think that in the evening there is often very bad behavior because people are tired and they're drunk and they're at parties, and men feel like all of a sudden everyone is fair game. And it's a pity, because otherwise we won't have any dynamic parties at festivals if women feel like that's a space in which they're always kind of vulnerable, right? And we don't want to
Yeah.
suck the life out of festivals where there are no more parties.
Yeah,
um
exactly.
but there have to be some, like, some boundaries and some like a structure of respect, while it's
Yeah.
also fun.
I think you need to find that perfect balance, and I personally, what you said, like if there's someone on set who misbehaves and you're the director and they misbehave towards a woman on set, or vice versa too, but in this case, man on woman or man to woman, as a director, you have to feel like, for me, I would feel like it's my fault, I know necessarily it wouldn't be, but I would feel like it is. So, yeah, I think it's something that when you're hiring everyone on your cast and crew, you have to make sure you're hiring good people, because they represent you.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I'm so grateful to the Me Too movement, because I think before it happened, you'd just be considered a difficult woman if you brought anything up at a festival,
Mhm.
and you'd be shut down very quickly. And also your reputation um, could be tarnished, and that could affect future jobs. And I think now that's not the case. Now it's moving towards the opposite, where if people feel like, okay, this guy is predatorial, then we don't want to work with him. And that's how it
Yeah,
should be.
exactly. Yeah, what? Yeah, and that's, yeah, it should be that way. Like it should be called out. It should be well known that that person's predatorial, because that will save a lot of people's careers, in my opinion.
Yes, and there shouldn't be such a high price to pay to make a film and to be part of the film industry. Like, this is not the price should be that we're paying should be, how can we create works of absolute genius? That's hard enough, right?
Mhm.
And how can we create these genius works and sell them? And so
Yeah,
the rest of
that's
it is just this kind of, hubris and weight that we don't need.
Yeah, that's what's so frustrating is that how hard it is to even like have, have like complete a project, right? Like it's so tough in itself. And then you have these things on top of it and you're just like it's just like it feels like, kind of like when it rains it pours. But I'm really happy that you were able your I guess last festival you went to, it kind of was like and you could correct me if I'm wrong. It was just kind of like a ray of sunshine almost. Like you went and I'm sure you were very skeptical at first, but then it ended up being strictly about business as it should be. Um, because when it's not, it's you don't. I'm sure when as you mentioned earlier in the episode, with all these situations you were going through, I'm sure that threw off your like mojo or like your like. I feel like artists have a certain like I hate the word, but like swagger, like you're going there to pitch a film or you're going there, like you need to amp yourself up. The first situation you said, like you didn't speak up. The second one you spoke up with and everyone was on your back. So that probably really, really helped you. But, by this time when you were at this festival and nothing happened, you probably like, did you let out like a big, like a sigh of relief almost?
Well, I think I felt like, okay, I found my way, because my
Yep.
way won't be the same as somebody else, but
Hmm.
also because I had thought about the standards I was going to set for myself and for people at the festival and how they were going to treat me. And then in a way, I felt like that resonated with whatever energy I was giving off. And I still managed to have a good time. It just, I think, like I said, knowing about databases, knowing about how to write emails to people, having the stamina to actually send out so many emails to producers. It's not like everybody responded with a positive response.
Yeah.
But it was a kind of 1 in 7 ratio, and then that really, that really yielded some great meaningful meetings with people who are very experienced and very at the top of their game at Cannes. And that's what you want. You want to be at these international festivals. You're surrounded by so many talented people. People have been in the business for 30 or 40 years, and you want to find the best. And that was really the first time for me, I have to say, where everything kind of clicked into focus. So yes, Ray, what did you say?
Like a ray of light, a ray of sunshine almost. Like,
Of sunshine, it definitely was. And but I would also say it took some years for me to get there. And if there's anything I'd like to impart, to the listeners, is to have some patience and also to think about your values at a festival. What do you want to get out of it, rather than what is the tone the festival is setting for your colleagues. You have to find your way. You have to listen to your inner voice, think about what your values are. What do you really want? What do you want to come back with? What are the results you want? What are the things that you value, also in cinema and also in the way in which you're treated?
it's a perfect way to end it because you're right. You gotta. What's your worth? What's your value? You know, it's tough in this business in general to kind of like try to respect yourself. Because everyone's going through 1,000 different things, right, in your head as an artist. And I mean, if you can really respect yourself and respect what you stand for, I think you'll be able to really kind of know who you are as an artist. And I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. And stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid. Stand up for yourself. I'll call people out on things, because you don't need to be liked by everybody, because you also don't like everyone, and call people out on that so that you can move forward and find the people who are right for you. Don't back down, and don't kind of cower, but have the courage to speak up and know that people are behind you also.
I think everyone is, in this specific situation, there's more people who've gone through it than people think. you know. So if you speak up, I think that will only help other people to also speak up as well. So, Carla, I appreciate you coming on the episode. Thank you so much for just opening up, sharing your story. And I hope, if someone's listening to this, they take something away from it. I personally think that you have inspired me to be an ally. I know, as I stated before earlier in the episode, when we met before recording, you were like, I would like to talk about how men can be allies. And I think that's very, very important in this industry. So, I mean, between you and I and and everyone else listening, this episode, like, you have inspired at least me to look at things a little bit differently, because every situation is different. So I want to thank you again for coming on the podcast and meeting with me and talking with me and I've now made a connection and yeah, I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I really want your daughter to be able to go move through festivals in a safe and happy way.
I really am happy that you came to the table with this topic, because it's a tough thing to talk about, and I think it's necessary. So I just want to say thank you. For all my listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed listening to Carla today. And for next time, this is Where's My Mind, a podcast about mental health and the arts. Enjoy. Once again, this is Where Is My Mind, a podcast about mental health and the arts. I'm host and producer of the podcast, Christopher Orangeo. All episodes will be available on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, and Amazon Music. Once again, this is Chris Orangeo, and thank you for supporting.